All right, part two. We talked a lot about your TA work, the transportational terms work. We want to move a little bit away from advocacy. There's hours we can talk about that still, and I think I will probably talk. I know I will talk to advocates again for this show, so I will leave some of that for them, and we'll come back to it maybe at the end. I want to talk a little bit more you as a bike rider. You're self-described urban bike rider. I'm assuming you're mostly a commuter, but what's bike riding for you? Is it an outlet, a challenge a little bit, or is it just fun, or is it just the thing you do to get places? I mean, obviously it's become a little bit more than that, but how do you see yourself when we forget about advocacy for a minute?
I think urban. I think I say urban biker just because maybe to connote that I'm not a bike racer. I'm not like a hardcore biker in any way.
You prefer bike rider over cyclist? I sometimes stumble over that, and I wonder how people feel about the distinction. And I use them often interchangeably, but I feel like cyclist is often more about that, the sport and serious aspect, and the bike rider is more about, I ride a bike, but it's not too intense.
I don't know
how you feel about that.
I don't think I've ever really used the term like I'm a cyclist. I mean, maybe on occasion, but and again, I'm kind of like slowly graduating a little bit more. Like I'm in the middle of like making myself a much nicer bike.
Okay.
But
you're building a bike?
Yeah.
That's fun. Okay, you have a little project.
Yeah. An Eddie Merckx frame.
Okay.
Pretty nice. But yeah, that's like also like I got the frame and I'm like, cool, like I don't know what to do with this. So
so you learn to be a bike mechanic too, a little bit, at least the basic kind
of. It's
of.
all pandemic activities, but
it's a good project. Yeah.
Yeah, but for I would say like my time in Boston, my time in LA, like living here, like I just saw a bike as like a way to.
I think it definitely have been an urban bike rider. I think I asked about that, but I think it's very obvious that you are an urban bike rider.
Like I bike to get around. It's to me, it's like the most efficient way to get around. It's like
you biked here today.
I biked here today. It was cold. But I'm okay with it. There was plenty of times in Boston I would race my friends in cars and I would always win.
Okay,
It's just, for me, I kind of get a little gleeful pleasure out of it. Like, oh, you take the train, I'll ride my bike. Like, oh, me here. It's just, it's the most convenient way to get around. It's like, to me, especially in New York, like, I mean, if I'm going to get urban planner nerd here, it's like, we have created our subway system of radial design. Based off of like the central business core design, right?
So to break that down real quick, I think what she's saying is that like everything goes into Manhattan, right, and then goes back out in this kind of star pattern or whatever you want to call it, right? And that's very common of many subway systems. But
it's not uncommon, but it's
I think there's one subway line that doesn't kind of do it, which is the G, but it goes north-south in Brooklyn, but it's like the only exception that it doesn't go through Manhattan. It goes back out. Anyway.
And like they're trying to supplement that with stupid BQX. So I hate the BQX. I'll leave them on record.
You want to real quick? The BQX is
the Brooklyn Queens Expressway.
Yeah.
It's an elevated streetcar. It's supposed to be built in a floodplain. It could very easily be a rapid transit bus.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's basically
it's
like
a proposed big kind of.
It's a proposal.
Project.
I mean, it's kind of more like a developer thing for kind of. I mean, their idea between that is like, oh, we'll get efficient transportation between South Brooklyn to Queens, like Astoria, on the waterfront.
I have to do a little bit more research on that. Okay, so this is supposed to be a train.
Streetcar.
Oh, a streetcar.
Yeah. So essentially, it would be like just tracks built into the street bed. Also, obeying.
Feels very retro, but okay. I'll have to do some more. I have to educate myself a little bit more on this idea.
I'm not a proponent. I mean, it's kind of like in theory, a good concept for yes, we need more connecting transit, but it doesn't need to be that.
Anyway, go back to bikes. You ride bikes. You ride bikes in cities, and
I'm saying that offshoot was because anyone in the city can tell you interborough transit is horrible. It's very difficult to get around. It's going to take you a long time. It's going to be painful.
Unless it's into Manhattan, right? It's like if you want to go.
Well, like if I wanted to go to like even wherever, Crown Heights, from Ridgewood, it would take me like an hour on the train, and it takes me half an hour on the bike. So,
which is half an hour on the bike because it's really just a little bit north-south kind of,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
So, I mean, for me, it's like more about a little bit about efficiency, but also like it's exercise and it's a mental health thing. Like I get to where I'm going, and instead of feeling like frustrated and like I was like stuck in a tube, I'm happy. I feel like invigorated and
and like unlike in cars, you also don't have to deal with traffic congestion so much, right? You can avoid it in a lot of ways, so you can get through it quicker. And I think there's also frustration that builds up in drivers, I think, for being stuck in traffic. And same with, if you wait for the subway and train, it's like, for whatever reason, not coming, or it's like 20 minutes away when it should really be 5 minutes away, or it's super busy and crowded, right? And again, not in these times, but
And I know, like, I mean, this is my personal opinion, and I know that I talk to other people who are like, oh, taking the subway is just a way of life, I'm used to it, but maybe it's just my personality, but I'm just like, no, like, I want to get on the bike, I want to go, like, I know when I can leave, I know when I'll get there, like, there's not going to be any interruptions along the way, unless, I get angry at a car for some reason, but it's pretty good. So, I mean, I think it's kind of just like, I have, and like, but with that comes a whole other set of issues that I think it's kind of great, because like, as you're like, okay, what's the most efficient way to get around? It's biking. Okay, great. I get a bike, and now I have XYZ to deal with, but the great thing about it is that there's a community that, like, I just, I think bikers, like, we see each other be like, kind of like, we're in this together, that, like, a little bit different than, like, just riding the subway, I'm not quite sure if it's, like, that same solidarity feeling a little bit.
Maybe not as, like, throughout, like, I do think that most cyclists feel that, or bike riders feel that way. I agree with that.
So, I mean, I love community. That's, like, a lot of where I come from in the urban planning world is, like, community planning.
Building,
so,
maybe also,
right?
For
me, it's kind of just, like, a great way to connect with people and to, be like, okay, how can we work on making the city better? And it's also, not to mention, biking is great for the environment, things of that nature. So we're trying to continue, carbon neutral society. I would love to see everyone biking. So that's why I bike. That's why I'm an urban biker.
It's a good mix of reasons. So that's why you're an urban cyclist or biker. Sorry, urban biker. Again, I use it interchangeably, not like with any intention behind it.
It's fine.
And that Dark, you have like a blog project that you have, and it's called Rage Bikes NYC. Is that right? Rage Bikes NYC, and you're on that blog. I looked that up, and you provide, like, I would say, I think you label them kind of safe, or at least maybe also convenient, scenic, and maybe interesting bike routes around the New York City metro area. I would say it's fair to say, from, like, I don't know, going to this beach or going like 7 miles around Queens or Brooklyn or something like that. How did you get into that, or what's the idea behind that? What's your motivation?
I would say,
goals,
and I try to tend away. This isn't also like an urban planning thing, but like tend to turn away from the term like safe so much. But I try to say like low stress, like good infrastructure, things like that.
Let's talk why. Real quick then, interjection. I teach English writing, so like word choice is very interesting right now. I'm linguist, anyway, but you don't want to get to my history, but that word choice there. So safe is avoided. Is it because there's a connotation that we worry too much about safety and we don't want to have people worry too much about safety, or is it more of a this goes into victim blaming kind of thing, or that you have to pick safe routes, or why is safe being avoided? Are there no safe routes? Is that why?
No. I think those were good ideas, but not quite. But it's normally in the past I maybe have called people, I don't like called people out, but like made a point to say it, and now I'm kind of like, I'm actually taking a stance where I'm like, we don't say that anymore.
Okay.
And it's, not we, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's, it's very, and it's a choice, particularly because safety means something different to everyone.
Yeah.
And I just think that, like, as urban planners, and we kind of like go in and we're like, It's safe now.
Okay.
I put this bike lane here, and it's not comprehensive. It's not like thinking about every aspect of what safety means to whoever is in that community. Mm-hmm. So when we use the word safe, like as bike riders or urban cyclists or urban planners, or just general people, we're kind of like erasing a segment of society in that way, where it's just like, maybe the street is quote unquote safe for biking, but what about all the other issues that kind of go into a community feeling of feeling safe? Like there's just a lot that goes into it. It's like a really multi-layered issue, and I think it's like something maybe kind of born out of maybe the summer and the protests and me kind of like reassessing my like space and how I can like use any small platform that I have to like be a little bit more like on the anti-racist like side, and kind of like really understanding that that term is really loaded and wanting
safe.
to like to make sure that
I think you're right, making a good point. It's much more complex than we think it is, like, right? Because I think and we often, like you said, we just label it, it's an either or, right? Something is safe or it's not safe, and then you can say, well, now we have a bike lane, so it's safe, right? It's like, is that really accurate? And it's much more of a multi-layered, like you said, complex, or more of a spectrum of safe.
It's more just like feeling like the kind of like a respect for people in their different walks of life, and understanding that safety means something different to everyone. So I like, there's other terms that we can use in terms of infrastructure, and I think like low stress, so like
so low stress,
like the stress levels of bike lanes.
I like that.
And again, it's like a little bit, maybe a little like elite for people, because that's like a really urban plannering term.
Low stresses?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
I'm not in the urban planning field, so you tell me. Like,
I mean, I think it's like, and again, no like judgment to anyone who's like wants to stay safe. Like, I think it's fine, but like if it comes up, I'm gonna like take the opportunity to say something about it. But so I'm trying to like kind of go over, but like,
I think you're changing the way people think. Then I think that's the goal, right? It's not like you're necessarily like, I think policing the word safe, but it's, I think, encouraging people to think a little bit beyond that.
I think especially in the cyclist community, biker community, like we need like there's a bit of like an entrenchment into like bikes. More bikes.
That's the solution to everything.
More bike lanes, and it's like like I come from a background where I try to make sure my degree and my like, thought process is very comprehensive. So kind of trying to leave it a little bit over there. So aside from the word safe, I say good infrastructure. I say low stress.
Good infrastructure, low stress.
But I think back to your point about like where this came from. So
So these are that's what we're talking about, the routes, and you're describing them not as safe, but you're describing them as low stress and having good infrastructure, and a few other descriptors as well. But I'll let you take over.
I mean, basically it was just like very born out of the pandemic, I guess, was having nothing to do. This is a pandemic project too. So I feel like But and then kind of just being like, I mean, and also addressing like the bike boom, right? Like literally, like I say this to people, and I'm like, okay, the best thing to come out of this pandemic, which feels weird to say, but it's like all my friends started riding bikes. Like every single one of them.
And I think those of us who were riding bikes before are like really curious and almost a little scared maybe too, to see where it's going to go, if we can keep these people on the bikes, or if we're going to in 10 years say that 2020 was maybe the summer of bikes, but then that was kind of we haven't made any progress, right? Or is it a game changer, right? And we had this natural experiment that has caused everybody all of a sudden to be on bikes, and more people are feeling like cyclists and seeing things like cyclists and bike riders and getting on the bikes and staying on the bikes hopefully too, right? I mean, because everywhere, like I talked to, the bike shops are out of bikes, those are out of bikes, everywhere is bikes, right? And bikes, I said, okay, back to you. So just to provide more context, I think everybody's kind of excited, but also worried about it a little bit from different perspectives too, right? And in the sense of, can we keep it going, or what are the consequences of this? And
Interesting. I see no consequences. I only see opportunities.
I'm with you there.
And
I'm with you there.
I think that's kind of where it came from.
I think there's some people, and this is, for example, like just to give you an example for that consequence of like, so there's a lot of people in the road cycling community like, well, I used to be able to ride these roads and there was nobody else on there, and like I could go as fast as I wanted to, right? And now all of a sudden I deal with other people, right? And I think this is a classic example of where we see cyclists as a united community, but they're not, right? Everybody has their different angles. So anyway, so back to that.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think it's exactly that attitude that like brought me to the table. It was like all my friends, so like, you know, all my friends know me as like the biking person. And yeah, so it's like, okay, great, like, Rachel, where do I get a bike? Rachel, where do I go? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, great, like, and some friends being like, oh, like, I saw your bike ride, and I, like, started it because I want to, like, know where that is, and, you know, and I kind of tried one out. I was like, okay, like, we'll just put up something and, like, see how people react to it, and, like, I got, like, so much positive feedback, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this, where'd you go, what did you do, like, so I was like, cool, like, I got a lot of free time. I'll just make this website. And it's for me, it's just like, we got a lot of people on bikes. They don't know where to go. They don't know what to do, and they don't know like where to ride. And how do we engage these people? I mean, the long-term evil plan for good with this project is kind of like, bringing these people in that are like, hey, I'm new, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I want to go have fun. Like, hey, go have fun. Go here to these places, enjoy this bike ride. You know, but hey, you know, now you can learn a little bit about that street. Like, if you do like read a little bit more in depth in the blog posts, I try to kind of like, you know, put some stuff in there. I'm like, okay, so but 4th Avenue, it's a great bike lane, nice protected bike lane. Right. Guess what? That took years of advocacy to get. And like, hey, you can also be involved in this. So it's kind of like I'm trying to capture this like bike boom in a like really positive way, and then be like, well, we also need you to like be advocates. You're a tour guide with the kind of little master plan behind it. And people are like, oh, it's like tourism. I'm like, I don't think it's tourism. Like, I mean, like it's well, I guess they are technically.
Have you gotten that criticism, or do you imagine that criticism?
People have said that to me.
Really? So that like, in the sense that we don't want that because that is tourism, or that's like, or is it more? It sounds derogatory.
Like, like, you should be like a tour guide, and I'm I'm not a tour guide, I'm a urban planner, but.
I see. Okay.
But it's like I understand like it's like but I kind of know that, and maybe I'm not like making it super clear to people because I don't think it's important. But like for me, I'm like, I'm like offering this tool. I'm giving these routes.
They're very visually pleasing, those posts. I think again, H Bikes New York, I'll put in the show notes. But like, I think you've done a good job of selling the routes too, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like on one hand, I really just want people to like ride their bike and have fun. And know where to go, and also like, I mean, this is a pandemic, things have been really hard for people, so a lot like portion of kind of what I'm doing now is like supporting small businesses. Like I'll be like, okay, go to this restaurant, and
here's a coffee shop. That's a good stuff.
It's kind of like a combo, like small business support, like fun places to go. So I mean, it is basically a tour, and anyone can do it. But like the long term goal would be like that those people feel like engaged and like they have someone has their back, I guess, in terms of like a really low barrier to entry.
I think those routes are very reasonable. Yeah, and I think like you said, I saw one, and some of them are outside of the city too. Like I think at the Harriman State Park one, but like you described it as like a downhill route, which is I think a great idea because you can get in some big hills there, and like if you're not ready for that, and you're like see one of those, maybe you're like getting a little shocked, but it's mostly downhill. And I think you go there with a train, you come back with a train, so you don't have to do the whole trip out there with anything but public transportation on the bike, and you could bike more if you wanted to probably and find the next train station. But it's so it's just kind of like trying to make it really approachable, and so people feel engaged. Like I know for me, like I mean, I'm a bit of like I feel comfortable in most scenarios, like I'll insert myself somewhere and just be like, I'm here now. And but not everyone has that personality, and so I'm just kind of like,
what could I offer to the person who just like doesn't know what's going on, has no like connection to the bike community at all, doesn't even really maybe know how to ride a bike or like how it works.
Yeah.
How could we kind of capture that audience? So that's what it came out of, and also just to help my friends.
Yeah, to help your friends.
Yeah.
So maybe that's it, because you have all these new people on bikes. What do you imagine, or do you know? Maybe there's probably not that much data on that yet, but it's going to be interesting to see. Yeah, is it a dessert menu or?
No, we have only one dessert. I'll show you.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm hungry, so you can tell.
Wonderful. Cocoa passion. It's a homemade. It's a passion fruit tart.
Yes, I like the try. Yeah, thank you. Okay. This is my exciting day out, so yeah.
Yeah, take it New restaurant.
Yeah, exactly. So back to the where were we? The new people on bikes, right? So there's you have friends and like other, and I think you get more perspective on that too, because you see more of that probably with the TA world, and planning your context and all that. So do you imagine a lot of these folks just kind of take the straightforward route to a place that they want to go, or they just always go the same routes because they have certain landmarks that they know from like walking or taking the subway, and then they figure out that what's the best route, or they put Google Maps in their ear, or they look at Google Maps or put it on their handlebar and follow the Google Maps bike directions, which can vary from like really on point to extremely terrible in my experience. So it's like I've had very mixed experiences with them, and I think almost always an experienced bike rider finds a much better route. But of course it requires knowledge of the routes, right? And I think the bike lanes don't always take you the right, they take you places, but maybe not always the place you want to go, or maybe not always the safest or fastest way. And I think a lot of people go, well, it's much faster if we just go straight here on this super busy highway, or what is that what you are kind of trying to help people with then, or that's what you envision people are doing right now?
Yeah, I mean, if I had all the money in the world and a lot of resources, I would love to make my own app that kind of had this incorporated, because I think you're right. Like, I've been trying a lot of bike apps lately, and I'm not really finding any that I think are super great. And I think you're exactly right. Like, I think when people decide to go somewhere, they pop it into Google and they just go that way. Like,
we've become very dependent on these big tech giants, right? Google, and I think there's really I don't know anything else. Like you said, there's the bike apps, and I know in the road race and cycling world is kind of Strava is a popular one, which you report workouts in, and they have what they call a heat map, which then tells you kind of where a lot of people ride. But I think it's very much biased toward people who like to exercise on bikes, right? Not to like people who want to commute, and then you're like that data is not helpful for going places either. So so there's a bit of a gap in the market, kind of where. But yeah, like you said, you need a lot of money for developing that, probably developing to get the data and to get good data and get reliable routes.
I'm doing this in the most low-tech, low-budge way that I know how, which is just squiggling my little Google lines to where I want them to go. But Google, it's not great like for taking the bike routes. Like, it's gonna be like, oh, this is a bike lane, it's the most direct way.
Thank you.
And oftentimes, like, it could be very unpleasant.
Yeah.
Like, the way that Google always like tells me to take home, to take Metropolitan, and that road is kind of terrifying.
Perfect, thank you. Metropolitan. Yeah.
So like over where I live in Ridgewood.
Yeah.
It's just kind of.
I've never done that, but I know it's easy.
Yeah, like technically there's a bike lane, but kind of like on the way back, it just basically disappears for a stretch, and there's like a weird merge area.
Yeah.
Kind of like almost could get hit by a car. And there was times where, like, before I was a little bit more used to it, but I was like so scared. I would just like have to get on the sidewalk. And,
I often tell people, like, when in doubt, like, you go. There's so many people I see that then go into the street and like they're clearly struggling, but they still go on the street instead of just go to the sidewalk. Like, that's so much. Exponentially. Less stressful. So
less stressful. I mean, I mean, I think in that context, maybe if you're talking about someone's actual experience, you could say it is safer to get on the sidewalk.
I think it's safe is justifiable in this context. Anyway, but so that app is a dream, and I think you're doing a very kind of nice, maybe we're gonna call it like more qualitative of a quantitative approach maybe to that,
Yeah.
and you don't have all the data and the development there. You can
Yeah,
create
it's
the app
just
out of
me
nowhere, but
literally riding those routes. I mean, and I've had a very, I mean, honestly, this started out just for fun. Like, I was just doing this.
Yeah.
Like, every weekend, I was just like, okay, nothing else to do. Bars are closed, restaurants are closed, nowhere to go. Like, guess I'll just go on a bike ride. And so all summer, I was just going on bike rides and kind of like getting a lot more knowledge of the city than I had before. And then just being like, oh yeah, this was really fun. Like, I didn't even know this was here. I should share this. It's just kind of me. I'm literally riding all over that. And just being like, oh, don't go that way. That's terrible. And then just kind of think about like what. And then kind of like, because I think like this, like being like, ooh, that shit was terrible. Like, how could I make that better, right?
And you see that by just randomly biking through the city sometimes, right? So that's, I think that's how you learn.
It's like a good combo of my passions and knowledge. So, I mean, it's just been fun.
And I think you made that point earlier when you talked about LA, and I was really like, riding the bike is the best way to see a city, hands down, in my opinion. It just gets you further and quicker places than walking.
Yeah.
And yes, maybe you have to pay a little bit more attention to traffic than with walking, but you still, most of the time, you can be relaxed. If you have the right route, and you can look around a little bit, and you get a feeling for the city or the neighborhood or wherever you are in the place. And when you walk, you can't cover that much ground. When you're somewhere on the ground for the most part, when you're in a car, you're limited, and you tend to not look either way, and you're stuck in traffic and all that. So
I think it's great. It's like a good way to build a mental map of the city. And also,
or you want to get to know a place, or you want to think about a neighborhood you want to move to, ride around. I think you get a much better feel for it than doing a quick drive there or something like that.
And even like, the thing I've been kind of realizing over the summer too is just like, you know, like we're stuck here, right? Like, can't leave the city.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, wow, you don't need to. Like, everywhere I turn, it's like, oh, I haven't seen this before. This is so cool. Like, I'm learning about a new culture, a new, like, you know, things I didn't know about. It's all here, really, when you think about it. So
there's a lot in New York City, and I've lived here for 4+ years now, and I still haven't seen. There's so much I haven't seen, and I think, you know, like I said, even in these conditions, with COVID, you could explore so much still. There's a lot to be seen if you're into that, right?
I'm trying to bring a positive lens to a tough time.
I think we're all trying to, right? I think we're all trying to put our bravest face and we out there, spread the positivity, even though I think inside sometimes we're like, oh my god, I can't anymore. So this is great. I think, again, I'll put that up there, and I really recommend that. I think you're doing some work there on Instagram too, kind of trying to help people. I think you got something on how to dress in the cold weather and all that, and I like that. It's just a very practical kind of, like the blog too, like here's some tips, here's some tricks, and I think it's very hands-on. I think you have some good advice there. And again, I like that it's for the average cyclist or for the average bike rider who maybe is newer to it, right? And then maybe, like you said, keeping the momentum going, keeping the people on bikes who were on bikes in the summer, and now it's the time where they put their bikes away and they go on hibernation, right? And I've come back to that. Everybody who was a bike rider before was like, no, please, like, let keep riding, right? And so on that, like, note, maybe, like, what do you think? And as we're trying to kind of maybe close up, round up the conversation here, and this, I think, where the advocacy lens and your urban planner lens comes in more too. Do we? What do I write down? Do we have to make bike riding? I use the word safer first. We're going to use less stressful or just easier to get into for people, to get more people on bikes, or do we have to start with infrastructure, or do we start by just getting the critical mass of people, and then that makes it easier to ask for infrastructure changes, or is that too much of a dichotomy that doesn't really exist? So it's kind of both. Which I think
it's kind of like the chicken and the egg, right? Like, if you build it, they will come. But you build it, if they don't come,
you're whispering that,
if they're not there,
if you build it, don't come.
And I think both is true. Like, if you build it, they will come, but they might not because they already put their bikes away because they were too afraid. Like, because.
No, it's like example, like down where I live, 86th Street down in Brooklyn, like just on a kind of wide part of it, they just recently put in a bike lane. Like no notice, I didn't know anything about it. I mean, I'm not that involved maybe always in advocacy, so I probably would have known that it was coming if I would have read the right documents, or the city I'm sure put something up somewhere. And it's there, and I'm like, nobody ever rode a bike down there other than me maybe once in a while, maybe a few other people. And it's like, I mean, it's great that there is one, but is that just all of a sudden, like you said, if you build it, they'll come? It's like, is that all of a sudden going to cause a lot more bike traffic on a road that still cars are driving fairly quickly? And it just ends abruptly in a busy intersection, and then people are stranded there, right? And you're like, well, now what, right? And so. And again, they probably have they have a bigger plan. I don't know the context, right? So I'm shitting on an idea here that maybe actually has more to it, right? But I don't know. I should do my research and educate myself. But this is like an example of like if you build it, they'll come, maybe, right? Or is it again like using the momentum that we have and then?
Yeah, I mean, to me, like I've said before, is I believe in community-driven planning. So to me, it's like we need to engage people. We need to meet them where they're at, and we need to understand what works for them, and then we need to build that. We can't just be like slapping bike lanes on the ground and thinking that we're solving some kind of problem. Like, and unfortunately, a lot of planning in the city is very reactive.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's just very like, oh, like something happened here, put a bike lane, slap a bike lane on it, like.
As in, like there was an accident, a bad accident, or God forbid, even a death or something like that. And then like, okay, we're gonna protect this bit, and then which is how politics works sometimes, right? There's like attention to an issue, and then you do something, you put a Band-Aid on it, and then.
And I was biking in South Brooklyn, Bensonhurst.
Bensonhurst.
On my pizza ride, and
you go to LB's Money Gardens.
We didn't go to that, but I had bike there. I had bike there before. Don't worry about it. There was a lot of argument about how we should have gone to LB.
There's not a great way.
No.
Not a bike lane, but that right in the front, that's where there is a bike lane now on that busy street. And for example, there's cars are always double parked there because it's just such a popular place, and they just put a bike lane down there. But there's never going to be a situation where you can ride clean for that bike lane unless it's like midnight or something like that, because there's always double parking, right?
We need the protected bike lane. I mean, so I brought that up because we were biking. I saw on the map, it was like, oh, great, there's a bike lane here. And biking with a group of people, some of them experienced, some of them not. And we're biking, and I was like, where's the bike lane? Like, and this was actually like a pretty like high stress, high traffic street. My friend almost got doored, and then we're biking along, and I was like, oh my God, like I cannot believe I suggested this street, it's horrible, there's no bike lane. And then, like, I was, like, beside myself, like, feeling really bad. And then we, like, get a block over, and I was like, oh, my God, there's a bike lane. And then I'm like, okay. Like, and so I'm actually, like, with some TA people and, like, some people who work for politicians. And we all are like, what happened here? Community board boundary. Yeah. And then I literally, like, went up and looked it up, and it was, like, community board boundary. Yeah. So
and the connection in between is the missing piece.
So it was kind of like, all right, like that design is not working for people. And like, would that have happened if that was like a really community-driven plan? Maybe not. Like, I took a street that I thought had a bike lane on it, and I almost got my friend horribly injured. Like, I mean, not me personally, but the bike lane.
And again, like, just because there's a bike lane doesn't guarantee that nothing happens, right? I think
that's
true. But
you know, it helps, and it was upsetting to see like, oh, like this was just a line on a map, you know. So there was a map that indicated there was a bike lane, but okay, I see what you're saying. It's a very roundabout way of me saying I think it's much more important to engage the community and understand what they want, and then kind of build around that, because creating good quality infrastructure is really important, but as we know and I've seen in the city, like a lot of times we're not going to get the good quality infrastructure unless we have a lot of people asking and advocating for it. And it's also like, where does it go? Who is it working for? Like all of these questions that like people, you know, top down, they just can't decide, or if they do, it might be wrong.
Oh no, a lot of people at the top don't necessarily ride their bikes through Bensonhurst, right? So,
yeah. So it's kind of, and like no shade to anyone like working on these things, but it's hard for those like 10 people in the government to really truly understand the on-the-ground experience for every single person.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's a combo, but I'd love to see everyone more engaged.
Yeah. So this is your rallying cry for activism here. Yeah. If you TA or whatever other organizations there are right in New York, but
join us.
Join that, or do something, or just be informed. Right?
Yeah.
I think it's a good way to start at least, and then think about maybe you can come to some event or
just think a little. I mean,
or drop a note to your local politician that you want to see more or something, right? So,
yeah, I think it's really hard. I just think that people don't know where to start, but just start think a little more strategically about why that happened, where to go, things like that. And I'm always happy. I'll answer any question. So.
So Dr. Rachel, so I think I want to wrap this up. We've talked a lot of interesting stuff. We could talk 4 hours still about the advocacy part, the infrastructure needs, and all that. But got dessert to eat here, and also, but I want to come back full circle and kind of started with you. I want to come back to you. Assuming 2021 brings a less, not completely pandemic-free, but less pandemic-y year, and a more open year, and giving you more opportunities again, and all that. What do you see in your personal future as a bike rider, as a TA advocate, as an urban planner? What are you looking forward to? Where do you see yourself in, I don't know, a year, 10 years? What are you looking at? What are your motivations, goals in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I find like this project was kind of born out of like losing my job and
the rage bikes.
And kind of extra time and whatever. But the more I kind of dive into it, I'm really enjoying connecting with people and talking and engaging in the bike riding cycling community. So yeah, I mean, to me, it's been passion for many years. I want to just continue working on it. Hopefully, maybe a little bit more professionally. Yeah. If opportunities arise.
Here's the job call too. So it's like if you have a good position for her.
Yeah, like I'd love to just keep kind of like working on this, creating a community around biking where people feel like supported. And they also feel motivated to work together, and they don't feel burnt out. They feel like we can really make a difference together. That's what I want. I want to just keep working on making the city a better place and getting more people on bikes. And I want to like see this city. Like I want people to be like, oh, when we talk about Copenhagen, like we're talking about New York City now. Like and I think everyone always says like Copenhagen.
Copenhagen, Amsterdam get kind of always paraded as these like, oh my god, these are the most bike-friendly city in the world.
They didn't start off being Copenhagen. They didn't start off being Amsterdam. Like, right? Like, it's only been like 50 years since Amsterdam really kind of took a turn. So yeah, where could we go? Like, could we really see ourselves as like a world-class cycling city?
Do we? And is New York going to get there? Or is it? It doesn't have to. I would say it doesn't have to be Copenhagen, Amsterdam, but can New York be? Labeled a bike-friendly city right now, or is it going to be ever?
Yeah.
Would you label it that right now? I can start with myself. I would say yes-ish.
Yeah.
I think I've seen worse, in especially in the US in many places, but I'm certainly not happy with it, and I don't feel like you said comfortable or relaxed all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm fairly experienced. I think today on my trip I felt. No, it's not true. I don't feel relaxed all the time. Partially it's my fault. I take at least one bad road that's shorter, and that's not the best idea. But it's
a bit of a biking here is just a little bit of a battle.
Yeah.
Feels kind of like a battleground in some ways, and in other ways, it feels fun and engaging. But yeah, I think it's kind of like. It's like knowing the right streets, having that knowledge. But I think the thing that I would love to see is like if I plopped my route into Google and I had no prior knowledge and I had no idea what I was doing, like that route would be a good route, and I would get there and I would feel like.
Or another app, sorry, Google. Yes, but
and I would feel
but
like
also
I had like a low stress, enjoyable ride, and there wasn't anyone blocking my bike lane, and it was all protected, and the whole network was connected. Like that's the goal. And I think we're a bit ways away from that. So we gotta keep
love that as a goal. Yeah, I think we can agree on that. If we can accomplish that, that would be wonderful. Or even just wherever you are, you have a bike lane that you know is right around there, and then it will take you a place. And but I think realistically,
like a connected bike network, I think, is kind of my ideal.
That makes sense, and then
what I'd love to see
for even a beginner to easy access. Okay, well, thank you, Rachel. That was a pleasure. I learned a lot. It was fun to talk advocacy. It was fun to talk urban planning. It's fun to see your blog, and I'll be checking it out again. And everybody else should too. That was Rachel Albetski. It was a pleasure. Thank you.